Hello and welcome to another exciting tutorial. Today we're going to take a look at how to use the oxygen tabs element to create or design a content switcher. So you can see that you have options 2 here, and then you have on the bottom view option 1, and then when you click on the button you see option 1, and then this switches to view option 2. This button can be placed actually anywhere, We're also going to take a look at how to make this responsive. So if we have this, so we can have it responsive like this. Okay, so let's just jump straight into it. All right, so we have here a fresh oxygen builder open. So the first thing I'm going to do is to add a section. Okay, I'm going to add a div inside that section, and then I'm going to make that div 100% width, and then I'm going to make it a minimum height of 5 or 600 pixels, so we're giving it a height. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is to add the tab element. Alright, at this point I'm going to open my structure panel to see what is going on here. So we have this div, and then we have the tabs, okay, and we also have the tabs content. So what I'm going to do is to select this div and then go to advanced layout and set it to relative, the position to relative. And I'm doing that because I want to set the tabs element to position absolute. So I'm just going to do that, advanced layout, position absolute. Now I'm going to move it to the bottom for now, so I'm just going to go 20 pixels from the bottom, okay, and perhaps 20 pixels from the left. So let's keep it there. Now for the purpose of what we're going to do, since we're going to do a content switcher, we need only 2 tabs and 2 content and tab content. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this, the third tab, and then I'm going to go ahead here and delete the third tab content. Okay, all right. So now for so I'm going to select this tab content, so you can see the tab content. I want it to fill in this div. Okay, so I'm going to give this div just a background color to see, for as a visual aid. I want to be able to see the boundary. Now I'm going to go to the tab content. I want it to fill in. So now normally if you go to size and spacing and you go to 100% height, nothing is going to happen. Okay, so let's just remove that. The tab contents, the tab elements works a bit differently. Sometimes trying to size it the way you would size maybe a regular div, sometimes it just doesn't respond. And one of the ways you can actually size it properly is by always remembering to use the flexbox feature, which is the flex grow. So I'm going to go to the flex grow and set it to 1, and you can see that it fills in. Okay, and then the general tab contents container, okay, that is the container of the tab contents, fills in, but the tab content is still the way it is. So you can see the class tab content. Okay, if you go to set size and spacing to 100, it just will not fill in. Okay, so just the same way, I'm going to delete that, and then I'm going to go to layout and then flex grow 1. So you can see it fills in now. Let me give it a background color so that you can see. Now if I go back to remove that flex grow 1, you can see that it's all the way up here. So now I have added that, and then it fills in. The second thing I'm going to do is to give it a background image. Okay, so there are 2 tab contents, so you have tab 1 and tab 2. Okay, so you have the different content for the 2 tabs. So what I'm going to do is to select the tab, like this tab, and then I'm going to go to, now for the background image, we're not going to use the class, we're going to use the ID, and then we're going to give it a background image. So I'm going to select this, and then so if we switch to tab 1, so you can see that background image. So we're going to edit this. I want to stay on this first tab content and just edit it. The reason is I'd like to just copy the styling to the second one. So the first thing I want to do is I want to give this, the bottom section of this tab content a slight gradient. Okay, so I'm just going to go background. This is for design purposes only. It's not functional thing, because I'm doing that because just in case we want to put some things at the bottom here. So I'm going to just select this color for the two colors, but the top, I want the top to be transparent. Okay, but then I want to move the gradient, lower. Okay, because it's filtering too much into the content. So I want to change this to percentage, and then I want this to be like, say, 90% or 80% is okay, and then I'm going to make this 100 to filter out, so you can see that gradient effect. Now, having done that, I'm using hydrogen pack, so I can just right click and copy style. That means if you're not using hydrogen pack, of course I assume a lot of you wouldn't be, you could just repeat the process. Okay, but I'm not going to repeat the process. I'm just going to select this tab content, and then let me just select it from here. So I have this. I'm just going to right click and just paste that. So I have that style applied. So the only thing I need to do is to go in and change the background image to a different background image. Okay, so I have my tab content set up. Now for my tabs, I'm gonna edit this tab. So the first thing I'm going to do is I just want to set the text color to white. Note that I'm selecting the tab class. Okay, so it's going to apply to both tabs because it belongs to the same class. So I have that, and then I'm going to style it with a border. So I'm going to give it a 50% radius, and then solid border 1 pixel. Okay, and I think that's it. And then another thing I want to do is I need these tabs to be bigger than this. So I'm going to select the tabs, the parent, wrapper for the tabs, and then I'm going to give it a width of 200 pixel. Okay, and now both tabs are seen. Now what we want to do is we don't want both tabs to be seen. Okay, but before we change anything, I'm going to change the text. Okay, so I'm going to go view option 1. Okay, so that's the first tab. Okay, and then I'm going to select the second tab, and then I'm going to say view option 2. Now for the tab content 2, I'm just going to call it option 2, and then for the first one I'm going to call it option 1. Okay, so tab content 2 is black, so I want to select the tab content class and set the typography to white. Okay, so that should affect this also, but this was already white. I changed that probably without knowing. Okay, so so we have these two buttons. Okay, and we need only one of them to appear. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly set that up. So I'm going to select one of the tabs. Okay, and then I'm going to go to active. So what I want to do is to set the active class to display none. So if I click on this option 2 button, it becomes active and goes out of view. Okay, so you can see the trick there. And then if I click view option 1 button, it becomes the active class and it's going to display none. Okay, so we now see option 1, but you have view option 2 here. All right, so we notice that this is not, this isn't filling in all the way to the end of this tab. So let's see what's going wrong there. Let me check the background color. All right, nothing. Okay, so I think this tab content needs to be a width of 100%. Okay, it is. Okay, it is a width of 100%. So I think what we have to deal with is this. Okay, what is this? So I'm going to make it a width of, alright, so I'm not quite sure how that became 80%. So let's go to, this was flex grow 1. Okay, size and spacing, 100%. Okay, so for some reason I really didn't notice what made it to be 80%. It is one of the quirks of working with the tabs element. Sometimes changing the value of maybe the tab content can alter, you know, the size of the tabs, you know. So it happens like that, but then of course we've got that sorted out. And then, you know, you notice that this button is not growing in to fill in this 200 pixel width of the parent. So I'm going to select that tab, and then of course not the active class, but this class. And then I'm going to go to layout and just go flex grow 1. So you see it fills up. And I want to centralize that text. Okay, so I'm going to go back here, click vertical, stack vertical, and then just centralize it. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is just to style this. So in my example, I had, you know, a design here, and so I'm going to go ahead and do that. So I'm going to select this div, and then I want to put a div inside it. Okay, so I have my tabs content. I like to move this to the top visually, so I just want to, you know, because this is down here, so I just want this to be up here in the panel. It doesn't really affect anything. So now I'm going to select the first tab content, which is this one, what we're seeing, option 1 here, and let me just rename that to option 1, and then I'm going to rename this to option 2 so that we will know. Okay, so this also, I'm going to rename it to view option 1, and then I'm going to rename this to view option 2, so it makes it easy to know what I'm doing. Okay, so I'm going to select this. Okay, so let's go to the first, you know, view option 1, and then I'm going to add a div. Okay, so I'm just hitting the letter D to add that div because I'm using hydrogen path shortcuts. Okay, so I want to move this text inside that div. Okay, and then I'm going to give that div a background color. Now you may not see that because it's not big, you know, so I'm going to set the width to say maybe 30%. Okay, and then so the height was the height of the parent was 400, so I'm just gonna give it the same height as the parent. Okay, so I think the best way to do that is to go to the parent and then set this to stack, and then now set it to stack horizontally. Let's say we have, well, we're going to be having maybe a div here and then some other content here, so, and then stretch it. Okay, so it's going to allow you to stretch all the way from the top to the bottom. Okay, and then another thing is I want this to flush. Okay, so we have some default paddings here. Okay, so if you go to the size and spacing, you might not see anything, but they are padding. So I'm just gonna put 0 to take those paddings off. Okay, and then for this div, I'm gonna give it a padding of say 50 pixel all around. Okay, and then my text, I'm just gonna style it, make it maybe bigger. Okay, let's say 32 pixels. And then give it a font weight of 700, and then we give it a typography letter spacing, let's say of 2, and then I'm just gonna copy that style, and then I'll go to this text. I just want to give that text the same style. Okay, and I'm going to I want to copy this. In fact, I want to copy this div, you know, into this. So I'm just going to duplicate that div and just move it inside. Okay, so I can delete this. Alright, so if I go to option 1, view option 2, so I'm just going to change this text to option 2. Okay, so sometimes it's faster to just duplicate stuff, you know, instead of recreating it. So I have that, and I want to just give this a slight transparency, let's say 80% opacity, and I'll do the same here, just 80%. Okay. All right, so it's taking shape. So view option 1, view option 2. Okay. All right, so let me just drop in the text element here and just grab some lorem ipsum text and put it there, and then I will give this margin. Okay, I should have done some of those things, you know, that way, but let me just duplicate this and move it here and just perhaps delete this. Okay, that's the title. So I have it here. I'm also going to give it a bottom margin of 32. Okay, and let's go to the other one, and the bottom margin is 32. You may wonder, how do you know? If you look at the bottom right corner, you're going to see, you know, that. Okay, so we have our setup. Now this button looks too big. I don't want it to be that big, so what I'm going to do is that I'm just going to go to size and spacing. Mostly these things usually have default paddings and you might not see, so make sure you are on the class, the tabs class, not the tab active, the tabs class, and then I'm going to go here and just put in a padding of 8. Okay, so, and then maybe 12 on the either side. So we have that. Okay, now what if we want to bring this up here, these tabs? So you can actually move this to any location since it's an absolutely position element. So I'm going to go to layout. All right, so now it's, you know, it is on the left 20 pixels from the left and from the bottom 20. So I want it to be 20 pixels from the right, and also remove this and 20 pixels from the top. So we've moved it here. So I'm just going to save that, and I'm going to just go to the front end and check what is going on, and then we have view option. So when we see option 1, we get the button to view option 2. So you can actually add anything, you know, in this space or anything here. Okay, so let's say for instance you wanted to put some pricing information or, you know, anything, you can add them here. And so the next thing is, how can we make this responsive? Okay, so if I go F12, okay, so you can see that even though the tab is still working, but things are just not good. So I want to move this button down here. Let's check on iPad. Looks okay, except that we might need to move this, okay, some more in, and the landscape looks fine. All right, so we're going to check this on, this is the size for iPad portrait. Okay, so I'm going to select this. Unfortunately, I did not use classes for this. Okay, so I would have just needed to change only once, and it's going to change on, and it would change on both, you know, tab content. So that is one thing you should take note. If you're working on a live site, always use classes. Okay, so I'm going to change the width. So if I go back to all devices, so the width was 30%. Okay, so I'm going to come all the way here and change the width to say 40%. That probably looks good. Why not just 50? And then let me save and just see how it looks. So note we are changing that on option 2. So let's refresh, view option 2. So 768, so that's what we are. Yeah, 768. I'm not seeing any difference. Okay, so it's still showing a width of 30. Okay, so we move it up to 40. I think that should work. So we have this, the width of 40, and then I'm going to select this also and give it a width of 40. I'm going to save it, and let's try that out. Okay, for some reason width is not applying in the viewport size that we have chosen. So let me go responsive and see what the problem is. Okay, so it changes to a width of 40 at 760. Okay, yeah, it does. So at 768, 700, and you see it does change. Okay, so what is happening here is we're asking it to change below. So once it's 767, it changes. So which is a problem sometimes. So that means if we want it to change at exactly 768, so we're going to apply that 40% here, okay, at this breakpoint. Another thing we could do is, if you really don't want it to be like that, you could remove that, and then you go to manage style sheets, settings, global styles with breakpoints, and then you just take this to 769, okay, but I usually like keeping it at 800, all right, and then I usually like keeping this at 1024, and then my page width at 1200 and above, okay, and then this I could just make this 482, so that so after that I just have to regenerate this CSS to okay. All right, so now if I take it back to iPad and then I refresh, so you see that works, okay, because it is set to to apply that setting less than, not from, but less than. So that is the reason we did not see it. Okay, all right, so that is it. So for that breakpoint we are okay. Now even if it doesn't look like that here in the builder, that is one of the problems. It doesn't look like that, but here it sure looks okay. Now the next thing is to go to the font size. So I'm going to go down to this, and then for this I want this to fill in all the way, okay? So I want this background to fill in, so I'm going to set it to auto, with auto, okay? And then so if you notice, the height fills up completely, and that's because when we were doing all devices, what we did was we stretched this, okay, we set this to stretch, okay? So so I'm going to go to this option 1. So let's view option 1. Okay, now I'm gonna go to this breakpoint, and then I'm gonna go to the same setting, and then of course let's first of all change this to auto, okay? So for the parents, I'm gonna remove that, so I want to make it like this, okay? So I'm gonna stack it to the top. All right, and let's view option 2, and so we see we have the same thing, okay? So it's stacked to the top, okay? So it's no longer filling in, so you can still see the picture in the mobile view. And then for this button, I want to bring it down here, so I'm going to go to tabs. Let's collapse this. So we have this tab element, which was what we had to display, absolutely. So we're going to go here, and then we're still going to choose absolute again, but this time we want it to be at the bottom 20%, but the top we want to set the top to auto, okay, and the right to auto. Now if we set the left to auto, now we would have expected it to come to the center, but it's not, and that's the thing with absolutely positioned elements. They just don't work the way you would expect. So I'm going to go to percentage and set left to 50%, which is going to push it halfway, 50%, across the container. And then so we want to move it 50%, backwards a little bit, okay? So it's moving 50% across, the 50% width of the container. So we want to move it 50% of its own width backwards. So I'm going to go to this is just the way to position an absolute, to center an absolutely positioned element. It's just one of the rules, the CSS rule to do it. So I'm going to go to Effect, Transform, and then I'm going to add Translate. So I'm going to translate x negative 50%. So, and that centers it. So we have that. I'm going to save this, and then I'm going to refresh this. So we see we have our responsive. So even if we go to a small screen size, things are working okay. So you can always play with the height, on the screen sizes if it is too much. If you want it to be, like what we had here was for these div, we had a minimum height of 600. So, but here we could just set it to say 400, okay, or let's say 500, and then save it and go back to refresh. And so we have the whole thing showing in the screen, okay. So that's it. So even if you can do it any way you want, you know, you could always change it any way you want. So if you want this picture to be at the top and you want this to be at the bottom, you could always do that. You could always go to this div, okay, we have that. You could always come here and just set it to be at the bottom, okay, and then you could also move the button to the top, and that's very simple. You know, you just go to the absolutely position element and just set the bottom to auto and the top to 20 pixel, okay, and save it, and that changes, so you could view it from here, okay. All right, so that brings an end to this tutorial. I hope you learned something. If you want to learn more about how to use the tabs element creatively, you could check out my other tutorials on how we recreated the Facebook community tabs and how we, you know, made it responsive. So the funny thing is, you know, each design uses a different approach for the responsive settings, so you could learn something from there also. So do like and share this video if you found it interesting, and also don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you another day. Have a great day.